everyone, and welcome to this week's inspir'em webinar. I'm Emma Maslen, CEO of inspir'em. Today we're going to be talking to Richard Young from Salesforce, but before we do that, just to give a couple of little logistics points about the call and the webinar that we're running today. So our webinar series accompanies the newsletter that comes out to everybody on a Tuesday, and this week we talked about using MEDDIC with channel partners, and in this series we've been talking about implementing MEDDIC across your whole organization, across the whole go-to-market. We've had a series of different presenters that have come in and talked to us, people who are in theatre with their teams trying to implement MEDDIC and MEDDPICC. And today is an extension of that. We're going to be talking to Richard about how he and his team use MEDDIC in Salesforce, and then also how that extends out to the channel partners and why that's so important. If you have questions for Richard, then please feel free to pop those into the Q&A or put something into the chat and we'll have a look at that. The team in the background are going to be also posting some useful information for you to go and have a look at some additional reading as well. So let's get started then. So hi, Richard. Thanks very much for joining us today. It'd be great to hear a little bit from yourself. What's your background and the role that you play at Salesforce?
Fantastic. Yes. Hi, Emma. And hi, everybody who's joining. I'm Richard Young, Head of Local Government for Salesforce. Salesforce you may have heard of. The Head of Local Government is a sales role. So I'm running a team of people who directly report to me, plus actually a series of people who indirectly report to me as well. We obviously implement a lot of our software via partners. So it's important for me to be able to align with the partners on what we do.
Right, that's great. Thanks very much. And we were just talking before we got started, the fact that Richard's obviously in the public sector team at Salesforce and obviously taking a couple of days off as the election's been going on in the background. Lots of interesting stuff happening there. Great. Well, thanks very much for the intro. So let's get started with a couple of questions on my side then. So it'd be great to hear a little bit about how you came across MEDDIC and MEDDPICC and how you're using that within the organization. How's it helping you as a leader?
Yeah, I actually came across MEDDIC probably over a decade ago and had been aware of the principles of it, read through the books, etc., and all those sort of bits and pieces. And probably like many people, as a sales director in other organizations, VP sales, had adopted some of it, but not all of it. So cherry picked the bits I liked from different methodologies. Moving into Salesforce, we didn't really have a solid methodology that we were using. So throughout the public sector team, what we decided to do is standardize on one methodology. And there are other areas of Salesforce who also use the MEDDPICC method. And it's a really good method for helping to understand, particularly with the enterprise level deals that we're dealing with, to help everybody coordinate, have the same language and the same terminology as we run through. It helps the new people who are coming into the team understand our expectations as a leadership team as well. And when we get into things like big bet reviews or forecasting, when we ask the questions, it gives us a framework to turn around and do those questions around. So that's why I got into it. And that's how I really enjoy using the framework.
Okay, no, that's great. So a couple of points that you just mentioned there is worth just having a chat around. So onboarding's a really key point. So, you know, most sales teams where there is always a little bit of cycle of some of the salespeople that come through. Certainly something that we focus on in terms of how do you articulate pain within an account, discovery questions that you'd ask around metrics. That's certainly something that we see as a really key attribute of using MEDDIC and MEDDPICC. But the other thing you mentioned there is quite interesting as well, because I know this is something you've worked really hard around those big bet reviews and the deal reviews. The idea of MEDDIC and MEDDPICC being a coaching tool and it not just being those meetings about hygiene reporting up the chain.
Yeah, if you only take it from a hygiene point of view, then it's just admin. It's yet more work for your people to do. So that's not how to make the best use of MEDDIC, MEDDPICC. If I look at new people coming in, if I ask a salesperson, do you understand about gathering metrics? They're just going to say yes. If I understand about gathering pain, they're going to say yes. Everybody's heard the term champion. So if I say, do you have a champion? A lot of the time people are going to say yes. But actually being able to turn around and say, but this is what it means to us. and this is the approach you need to take to get that information, means I know it's for example with a champion, I know it's a true champion versus a coach. And those are two very different individuals who can turn around and do different work. And it's absolutely fine not to have a champion and you've got a coach. It just means you've identified that you need to turn around and try and work towards that. And not every deal has one. So again, it's the coaching ability there gives the framework for me to turn around and ask the right questions, but it also helps the individual who's running the deal to understand what our expectations are. Because if they don't understand your expectations, then it's not really fair on them to turn around and expect them to come to you with the information you want from them if you haven't given them that framework to work from. This is what it really does. It's just that it makes everybody's life easy. And it's about that learning and the growing and identifying to help these deals get closed.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And like you say, I mean, expectation setting as well is something that's really key. By using that common language, everybody knows what's expected from them in those conversations. But also the questioning becomes a lot more simple. You can ask the same questions over and over again. It becomes that muscle memory. Okay.
Well, I have to say, I do have your deck, your cards, and we can do those at random sometimes to make it a bit more fun. So they get the random question from the deck, which works quite well as well.
Yeah, I feel like we've turned a whole bunch of Salesforces into like poker maniacs now by the pack of cards on MEDDIC. But
well, it's reviews can be pretty stale and boring, so actually it just introduces some fun into it is the reality. So it's good, and the look of dread on some of the AE's faces with what questions are going to come out is quite cool.
Yeah, no, that's great. And the great thing about those sorts of things as well is the like you say, getting the teams involved. They can ask each other those questions. By doing that, that's how they really learn, and it really embeds. That's great.
Yeah, and that's certainly what my team does. So we've got actually a big bet review later on today. So I've had a review with a pre-meeting on Wednesday with them where we've gone through our standard deck of the MEDDIC questions, etc. But I know they've been talking to each other about and stealing ideas about how they're approaching it, etc. And that's great because fostering that teamwork and collaboration around this is really good for people.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. So the topic of the conversation for today, we're going to steer down into the partner road. So we issued a blog earlier this week, which is talking about MEDDIC and channel partners. We were very fortunate to be invited along to a Salesforce channel event a couple of months ago, where we were talking to the public sector partners. Might be worth just giving a little bit of background of, why did you think it was a good idea to have us along to that session? And what's the value you see around getting the channel partners involved in the same qualification methodology?
Yeah, the partners for us, they actually deliver the vast majority of our implementations through our software. And they're involved in our sales process. And some of them are running their own sales process outside of what we're doing, etc. So really, it's an extended team for us. So if we've got this extended team and they're working very closely with us, then we need to be on the same page so that when we're using the same language, they say we've got a champion, we know it's a champion. They've captured some metrics, we know what the metrics are. And if we can increase the skill set of those partners by using something like MEDDIC, MEDDPICC, it also means that we'll have a higher win rate within these deals that we're running as well. So it's multiple elements. One is ensuring that the skill sets get higher and that the extended team, as they are, turn around and use the same language. So we're all talking about the same deal in the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so one of the things I was sort of thinking about as part of this is with that extended team, you've got a lot more characters that are involved. And obviously there is a trust element that's going on in there as well, where, I've always had this in my career where you're working with channel partners, how willing are they to sort of get you really involved in their deals? How much information do they want to supply? But obviously you have a responsibility to the forecast, certainly at Salesforce, around what exactly they're doing. So there are elements there where if you can talk about champion and economic buyer in the same way, and those action plans that are required around them, then surely that's helping your forecast accuracy.
It helps my forecast accuracy, but you also have to remember the channel partner themselves has to do their own forecasting internally. So this helps both of us to be on the same page of what we're trying to achieve and how it's being done, so that we should be in lockstep and saying, actually, we both think we've got a champion. We've both got the pain identified. We've both got the metrics. And sometimes we'll hear different things from different people. And at that point in time, we can compare notes and swap information. So for all of us, it increases the forecast accuracy and the win rate of the deals.
Yeah, absolutely. And risk is a good thing. Like we talk about this in the deal reviews that we do. Deal reviews should never be about presenting a beautiful shop window. It should be about identification of risk and mitigation strategies that everybody's brainstorming to work out how do we make sure that we, cover that risk, make sure that we're like working towards, forecasting with control. Okay. That's great. So in terms of, getting the teams to adopt their language, though, you guys have been on a bit of a journey yourselves around adoption, but also getting the channel partner teams to do that. What are some of the challenges that you see that you personally have faced, or with the teams that they're facing around adopting MEDDPICC?
Yeah, it's like any learning that people go through. You have to be careful that they're using it on a continuous basis, because if you just have the training and then don't use it, the reality is people forget about the different elements, etc. So you have to make it part of the management routine, and it's the managers who are really going to drive this by turning around and saying, okay, so where is this in MEDDIC terms? Where is that in MEDDIC terms? So, for example, with the big bet reviews that we're doing today, there's a standard deck that we've created, which basically has the MEDDIC elements down the left-hand side, the key influencers as per the MEDDIC describes them, etc., and some other elements that are specific to Salesforce. But this means that it's front and center with any of the big deal reviews and the day-to-day forecasting that we're doing for people. So it helps to reinforce that usage and the adoption. And if you just don't turn around and do that, people gradually forget about what they're supposed to be doing with these things. And, salespeople will take the shortest route if they can. So therefore, if they don't need to do this, they won't do it. And it's the same with any methodology. So you have to reinforce it, because there's really good reasons for doing it. And the most successful salespeople I see have a structure to how they sell. So if you can get your people to start using this structure, it's likely to make them more successful. And that's what we all want.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I may just add a little bit into that as well, I think one of the things that we've seen around the implementation that you've put in, not only was it about the individual contributors and then embedding it in the operating rhythm, as a leadership team, you also took the time to make sure that you really understood as well what good looked like, what it needed to be in the future, what was the evolution that you needed to go on as a leadership team. I think some of the implementations that we see from other teams where the leaders aren't so engaged, they think almost MEDDIC is something that should be done to the salespeople, and then they'll pop out as amazing salespeople. There is a requirement there by the leaders to really get stuck in and understand that this is part of their development roadmap. It's important for their team's development as well. And they need to really be thinking about how do they lock in all of those elements and really drive adoption.
Yeah, absolutely. We had two different types of training from you. We had the AEs go through the standard training, but then we had the managers training as well. I've seen it in a lot of organizations previously where the training is given to the AEs or the same training is given to the managers. And the problem with that, of course, is actually the manager's job is different. So if you don't go through that education process, you don't know how to apply the principles as well. So it's critical that you do that type of engagement. Otherwise, you are setting yourselves up to fail. If you're going to do this, do it properly. Invest in both the A's, but also the line managers that you're going to use as well. And it's great, in fact, even beyond the line managers, you go up and you get people to understand what's really happening. And I think people will really get it and understand it at that point in time. And that's where you really get traction and you get the adoption, because everybody's saying the same thing. And if we look at that, and I look at how I can then use it with my channel, if I'm most of the time speaking to the equivalent directors, etc., within the channel partner organizations, if they get it and they understand it as well, and the AEs are talking the same language, the salespeople, then we're aligned at multiple levels within those organizations, and it really does help what we're trying to achieve, what we're doing, and of course the forecast accuracy as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. Just one whole team, a bigger extended team, just working in one motion. That's great. Okay, so a couple of other questions for me, and then we'll get into some Q&A. If anybody's got a question, please feel free to pop that into the Q&A, and we will come to that shortly. Do you have any top tips, Richard? We like to give people top tips on if they want to get started with MEDDIC, MEDDPICC, and specifically with the channel partners. What would be maybe your 1 or 2 tips that you would give to people?
Yeah, depending on how often you have reviews with your sales team, make sure that it's centered around the MEDDIC process when you're reviewing their forecasts, etc. So I'll go through, I've got the list of their opportunity, obviously it's in Salesforce, and it comes up and it gives me the list, etc. And then I'm checking it against MEDDIC. Whereas, when I deep dive into these accounts, okay, this is a committed deal for this quarter, right? Do we have a champion? No, why not? Who should be that person? Who's the economic buyer? Have we met them? Can you get me in front of them as well so that I can sense check and validate things? Where's the metrics? Because of course the metrics and the pain is what's going to build our ROI. And if we don't have those, then I know to turn around and say, actually, this forecast isn't as good as it should be. We need to potentially push it, or there's a lot more work to do. And I could step in, or I can work on getting the resource to do that. That's where it really helps. So the bringing it to your day-to-day work is got to be the top tip to make sure it becomes embedded in your organization. And the questions you start asking around MEDDIC become a habit forming because you're doing on a daily, weekly basis. And that makes a huge difference. To help with initially getting started with this, I would certainly get some of the documentation that you provided so that people can refer to it easily and go, okay, this is what I'm going through. I'm just checking what I have and the description of this, and it matches and I'm good for it. One of the biggest areas there that we find is with coaches versus champions. And we just refer to the documentation. I get them to ask themselves the questions based on the documentation, and they self-identify in or out as coach, champion, etc. And that, again, it just reinforces the learning that's been done. But actually having ready reference to some of the materials really does make a difference to them, because people do forget over time.
Absolutely. I think there's a couple of really great points in there. Having the materials, making sure that you're constantly reflecting on that. Some of the best salespeople that I know in the industry, it's always interesting when you get old hands who say, I don't need to go through this training because I've done this all before. The best salespeople I know go through the training over and over again because there's always a point of reflection. There's always a deal that they're working on where they think, oh, actually, that person's a coach, not a champion. So I think there's definitely a point there. And to the point that you made around the coaching as well, I think the style that you've come up with the public sector team at Salesforce, you're very coaching in your questions. This isn't a firing squad. This isn't you don't have a champion, it's not going in the forecast. This is let's just reflect on this for the moment. Is that person really a champion? And if not, okay, so what do we do about that? Because we still want to go and close this opportunity. How do we improve ourselves? How do we reflect on that? What action do we go and take?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to some questions. We did get a question about the amazing color coding on your bookcase, which I commented on when we met before. So that's being very much enjoyed by everybody. But some more specific questions. Is MEDDIC even more relevant in a sales environment, immediately post-election, specifically for pipeline generation and discovery? Do you think that things are going to be needing to be more qualified, perhaps, in those early stages post-election?
I think it depends on the specific area you're looking at. If you're turning I think the elections represent change. So you do need to revalidate what you've already learned, etc. However, if I look at my team, I know, and some of the other teams, the elections have had an impact already with some of the deals. So, for example, cabinet meetings haven't been made, etc., all those sort of bits and pieces. However, the fundamental underlying issues have not disappeared from the organization. So it may delay the process slightly, but the pain and the metrics we produced and the return on investment for the customer as a net result of that still exist and haven't disappeared. Now, it might be that some of it gets reprioritized. It's absolutely true. But if the pain and the problem hasn't gone away, at some point, they're going to have to deal with it. So most of the time, it's not going to have too much impact from that point of view, other than a potential delaying factor.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of those things to think about. I mean, champion's going to be really key to this. You know, pain exists and it's painful for individuals, but the question is do those individuals still have the power post-election? So
Yeah.
it's understanding, well, what's changing above? Where is that prioritization? Are there bigger pains that are now being identified and prioritized, bigger risks that the government see? And then how is that filtering down in terms of power? And like you say, the requalification of that. You usually see a couple of things that happen sort of post-election. There's some people that realize that and they get in a real hurry to get some stuff done.
Yeah.
And then there's the people who are procrastinating and then they're waiting for the change to come back down. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
You see, I would argue that those people who were procrastinating always had the tendency to do that and was always a risk to the deal to begin with. The people who want to make changes and turn around and drive things forward, they're going to try and do that anyway. So yeah, you're right. The champion is critical to it. There's always things that happens with deals. Yes, the election could alter it. Somebody could move jobs, etc. It's just another obstacle we need to be aware of and make sure we're navigating around.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that comment about will those people procrastinate anyway? We always say that with champions, they'll always find a way because they're always thinking about their personal wins, how they want to take things forward. Absolutely. That's great. And like you say, you know, with change comes opportunity in all of these situations when we've had cost of living crisis, wars, COVID, etc. There have always been sales environments that have been able to capitalize on that. The question is how curious are you about finding the angle and making sure that you're aligning your message to whatever the biggest priority is. Okay. We'll take a couple of quick questions before we wrap things up. So I've had a question comes in that says, from your experience, what are your best practices about identifying about getting to the economic buyer?
Yeah, that can be tricky. It's not always straightforward. To begin with, you need to identify who the economic buyer is, and that's not always straightforward. And frequently that economic buyer is misidentified, both by the salesperson and the people we're dealing with. So you frequently hear in sales, yes, I can sign up, and then all of a sudden you get to the last minute and you find they can't sign off. I find the quickest way to work out who's the economic buyer is actually look at the organizational chart, and you can pretty quickly work out who's the signatory on things from that point of view. And then it's a question of how you align to the business. If you have senior engagement, the economic buyer doesn't tend to be too difficult to get to because they have a vested interest in what's taking place. If you have somebody who is not a champion and is not working with you and you don't have that senior buy-in, then what you tend to find is they will hold you back because they want the glory of the deal for themselves effectively and are concerned about questions that higher level individuals would ask. At that point in time, you probably know you've got a problem in the deal. So if you've got a good deal and you've got a good champion, it actually becomes much easier to get to the economic buyer. If you don't have a good champion, and this is a great way of testing them, you're probably going to struggle to get that. And I've had that in deals where I've had what we thought was a champion turn around and say, yeah, we'll put you in contact, but it never happens. At that point in time, you know that they're not a champion and there's a reason why they're worried about putting you forward. And they certainly don't have the political ability to put you in front of the economic buyer, in which case they're a great coach, but probably not a champion.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's something in it for people and they know that that person is the path to get something signed off, they will take you there. If you've earned the right to do that, they will absolutely take you there.
If they trust you,
Yeah.
do it. Yeah. So it could be, of course, that you haven't built enough trust yet, is the other element. So in which case you need to look at how do I build trust as well as making sure that the person is actually a true champion. And that's quite difficult in the sales environment because people will look at you and go, you're in sales, particularly in the public sector. So therefore, you need to ensure that you are building and doing items which are not just in it for yourself, looking at the opportunity now. I close it. The phrase I often use is commission breath, and people smell that a mile away. So make sure you don't have that when you're talking to people, because that's not building trust.
Yeah.
You know, talk about project success. Don't talk about contract signatures.
Yeah. We talk about flowers and chocolates for champions. So what are the things that you can give in a non-bribery sense? And usually for most ambitious people, that is connections in the industry, insights in the industry, knowledge, those sorts of things. You should be giving those away at a pace that you can then build that trust, so that then when you ask for something back, you can get something back. But you should be doing it on the basis that that's going to get you the check for sure. Great. Okay, unfortunately, we're out of time. So for the additional question that I've got on the chat, what I might do is I might actually connect you to Richard, because I think you'd be good people to connect to anyway. So thanks very much for everybody's questions today. Richard, thank you very much for coming on today. Great to hear your thoughts.
You are welcome.
Amazing. Thanks very much. And so we'll send out some information on the blogs and additional information on the recording as well. So if you'd like to listen back, feel free to do that. And this is the last in our series now for this particular term that we do. The next one that we'll be running will be in September. The series we're doing in the autumn is going to be on CXOs. We're going to be inviting some CXOs on to talk to us about how you get in their diaries, so to really understand what's important to them. So thanks very much, Richard, and thanks everybody for joining today, and we'll see you towards the end of the summer.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thanks.